pattern is called the appositional. That's just the fancy name for simple interrupted. So you guys all know how to do simple interrupteds, right? And actually, simple interrupteds are probably one of the most commonly used suture patterns to close hollow organs incisions now, okay? You ask a lot of surgeons, they're just closing their incision with a series of simple interrupteds. But there are some other patterns that you guys should be aware of. Okay, so the first one is going to be the Lembert. It's sort of the classical GI pattern. I'm just going to steal an instrument to weight this down, because yesterday it was flip-flopping all around and it was very frustrating. Hi. I just tried it. Can you see that? He had it working.
Yeah, he just sent out like
Great.
pay more attention.
Okay, here's our friend the doyen, okay? Here's doyen intestinal forceps. I just have it here. What you guys might want to do is, you might want to actually fix, your little tubey thing to your suture board so that it doesn't flip-flop around, okay?
We didn't get a tubey thing.
You will get a tubey thing. Yep. Okay, so the Lembert is sort of the classic GI suture pattern. It can be interrupted or it can be continuous. So we're going to start with the interrupted. And so we're going to go back, remember our near and our fars? Okay. So the Lembert suture pattern is a partial thickness pattern. So we're going to start far from our incision. And we're going to take a bite, partial thickness, so I'm not going to go through the whole thickness of the wall. And we're going to come out near on one side of the incision. And we're going to cross over, and we're going to, on the opposite side, start near to our incision, take a bite, partial thickness, coming out far. And then we're going to tie that off. Okay, this is the Lembert. Now, okay, as I tie this, this reminds me to tell you guys, if I can get this to focus a little better, maybe. A couple things. On the last exam, there were some of you who are still having problems with your instrument ties. Okay, so just a little review of your instrument ties. Always make sure your needle holders are between the long needle end and the short end. Wrap the long needle end towards the short end and tighten. Your short end should always be being tightened with every throw in the opposite direction. So towards and then away. Okay? So this is an example of an interrupted Lembert. Okay? We can also make this continuous if we start with our interrupted. So we're going to do our knot. So we start far from the incision, partial thickness bite towards the incision edge, coming out near. Cross over to the opposite side, take a bite near, partial thickness, coming out far. Okay, I'm tying surgeon's knots just because my silk isn't holding the knot very well.
Would you not normally use a surgeon's knot?
In reality, you probably don't need it, yeah. So whenever you guys are tightening your knots, for most of your patterns, most of the knots that you do, with some exceptions, You always wanna make sure you're tightening perpendicular to your incision, okay? So I'm always tightening towards or away. Some of you started to tighten kind of on a diagonal, okay? So it should, most of the time, with some exceptions, be perpendicular. Okay, if I'm doing a continuous pattern, I'm gonna trim my short end, and now my continuous pattern is just gonna be a series of the same pattern. I'm gonna advance down my incision a couple millimeters, go back to my original side, take a partial thickness bite far to near on one side, and then near to far on the opposite side. Now, really important with your hollow organ patterns that are inverting, like the Lambert is, as you go through your pattern, tighten as you go, okay? It's really hard to tighten your bites afterwards, okay? Return to your original side, advance down a few millimeters, take a bite far to near on one side, cross over the opposite side of the incision, and near to far on the opposite side. And remember to tighten, okay? As you tighten, your suture material, some of your suture material will actually vary, okay? Because that's because your incision edges are inverting. On the foam, it's a little bit hard to appreciate because the foam doesn't really want to stay inverted very well, okay? So we're going to take one last bite, and then we'll tie off, okay? So far to near on one side of the incision, cross over, and then near to far on the opposite side. Let's say we've reached the end of our incision. Okay, so I'm going to tighten that. Okay, and now to tie off, like we were doing with some of our skin patterns, reverse the direction of your needle. Right, take a bite that's far to near, and then a bite that's near to far on the opposite side. This will give you your little loop on one side of the incision, your long needled end on the opposite side, and we can now tie that off. Try to get in the habit, if you aren't already, to keep your thumb forceps in your hand as opposed to putting them down every time you are tying a knot. They'll want you guys to do that next term in surgery lab. Okay, and then tie that. This bite should have been probably tightened before I went and did this knot. Okay, and then tie your knot with 4 extra throws on top. And that is your continuous Lambert. Do you have any questions on that?